Jesus girl. Jesus girl. Hey, it's the diary of a Jesus girl. Let the wings of the Spirit of the Lord just a swirl. You are in it, but you know you're not a part of this world. And for the swine, you should never cast your pearl. Yes, it's just the diary of a Jesus girl. The diary of a Jesus girl. Welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast, where we discuss real-life issues of the committed Christian woman. This podcast will inspire you to love Jesus and impact lives like Jesus. And now it's time for your host, Crystal Day, award-winning author, speaker, and Christian coach.
So, welcome to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. And it's another beautiful week. And we are just rejoicing. It's the summer, and we're just enjoying that we're getting back to some level of normalcy. Of course, not totally, because people are still being affected by COVID, and we continue to remain prayerful. There are so many things happening just all over the world. I'm in the US with the Black Lives Matter and the racism, and there's just so many things going on right now, and it can cause discouragement, but this podcast is here to inspire and then to encourage. So I am excited as usual about my podcast guests. Every week I believe that I get the amazing opportunity to interview some of the most amazing people out there. And today's guest is from Atlanta, and I met her a few years ago through the Life Coaching Network. She is a powerhouse. I spoke at her event in 2019. That's in North Carolina, and that was amazing. And she just has an amazing story, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the Lord has placed on her heart. So I want to welcome Shenesia Ewing, and I know that I pronounced that right?
Yes, you did.
Oh, yay! So I'm so bad at pronunciation, right? But I normally just stick to Coach Nesi, and she's just a gem, she's just a gem. So I want to welcome you, Nesi, to the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. Welcome, my darling. How are you doing?
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be in your presence. And so it's always a pleasure to just talk to you in general. But I'm doing amazing. I'm staying prayerful, staying, in faith, and trying to stay above water with everything that's going on.
Nice. So Nesi is a speaker, a coach, an author. She's a mother. She's a wife. She's a minister that is taking a little time to just come out, So I know that she's kind of still in that phase of, no, I'm not sure, but I know without a shadow of a doubt, that's a part of her calling. So Nesi, I want you to tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your background, and then I want you to share with us, our listeners, about your conversion story. How did you come to Christ? That's the part of the podcast everybody loves to hear, what led you to come to Christ. So go ahead, darling.
Well, about me is that I'm a prayerful woman. My mother prayed for me. My grandmother prayed for me. We've always been a family that put God first. My mother said, you can't do anything without God, without your faith. You can't do anything. And for me in general, as a coach, as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner in general, as a student, as a soldier, with all the hats that I wear, you have to have someone and something to always believe in you. And we know that God is a faithful God, and we know that He is one who will always forgive us for whatever we may go through. We know that we can always try again and start again. And so for me, just in general, I want to tell you, my conversion story has always been faithful. It just got stronger over the years, because my family is when I say that we pray, a family that prays together stays together. You know what I mean? And I know that's so cliche, but it's true, because that's what keeps my family together. And so as I've gotten older, and every trial and tribulation my conversion story was never conversion. It's about the strength that God put in me to bring him closer to me. And so even sometimes when I just stayed stagnant and I stayed right where I was, he says, I need you to come closer to me so that you can see more of the vision that I have for you, the purpose that I have put over your life. And so I need you to come closer. I need you to read deeper. I need you to get some more understanding of my word and being able to walk in faith and walk in power. But you can't do that if you're staying where you are. It's okay that you know me, but do you have a relationship with me? Do you understand the word that I'm giving you and putting over you for you to be able to speak into the lives of others? And so my relationship with him has become where he's now my father. Instead of just saying, Lord Jesus Christ, God, he's my father. He's the man I go to for everything. And so, when we talk about conversion, my conversion switched over from just understanding that he was God, but now building a solid and firm relationship with him.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Nesi. So I want you to start a little by telling us. So we have heard she has a book called Uncovering the New You. So I want you to tell us about that past, that niece in the past. And I don't want to share, but she has shared, just being a single mom, almost being homeless. Just there's so many aspects of her story that is just so inspiring. So I want you to just share about how did you get into uncovering the new you. So share with us a little bit about your past and how that uncovering came about.
So uncovering the new you was brought about because I was a single mother in college, pregnant, and I ended up homeless. Things went wrong with me and a old friend of mine, and it didn't work out. And I found myself struggling to pick up the pieces. Money was low. And I, ended up getting pregnant with my son. And when I got pregnant with my son, everything seemed like it's going to fall apart. Didn't know what was next. And as a single mom, pregnant, sleeping in my car for roughly 6 months, I found my way into an apartment, was able to keep it there, but was still struggling through that because now that my son was here, very little money, no jobs I didn't have any care. My mother and my father were really a part of my strength and a part of my ability to stand. And when they came to get my son, it was more so of, I need you to finish college. I need you to get your head on right because now you're a mom. Now you are a mother. We are going to be here, but this is still your responsibility. They still kept the responsibility like you are still mom. We're just grandparents helping you out, because when there's no income coming, you can't feed a baby. There was days that I couldn't feed my son. There was days that I couldn't feed myself. And so in that midst of while my son was with my mom, I went through domestic violence, was in a relationship where it was very toxic, very controlling, very abusive. And one time was enough for me. But that one time caused me to walk across the stage with a black eye, my college graduation with a black eye. And I had to face thousands and thousands of people trying to explain how I was stung by a bee and it ended up with a black eye. I was ashamed. I was hurt. And it wasn't a good look for the person I've always tried to be instead of being the person that I am. After the domestic violence, depression hit because now my son is with my mom. I'm still trying to figure out what it is to do. I'm looking for resources. I'm still trying to work. I'm still trying to find a job. It's either I'm not educated enough or I'm overeducated. And I ran into that a lot. And so being in the military, I volunteered to go to Iraq, knowing at that time when my son was born in 2009, wars were still going on. The violence in Iraq was still high. So I was willing to risk my life for my son. And I did. Came back to the States, thought things would be better. But, you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. And so as I paid off bills, I still didn't have anything to come home with. And in lieu of that, I began drinking. I lost my best friend to suicide. I lost my aunt in the same year. I attempted suicide in that year. It just seemed like everything was falling apart. And so when I came back from Iraq finally and got through that, I looked in the mirror one day and I said, Nesi, you have to uncover the new you. I had started the fitness industry in general when I was overseas. And in that moment, I just picked out a name, created a business, had no business foundation, had nothing. And the name was called Get Right Fitness Boot Camp originally. That's ghetto as I don't know what, just ratchet and out of this world. However, it wasn't fruitful because I didn't think about it, didn't know anything about it. I was just putting things out there and hoping that it would work. I started it with $5 with the little money that I had. When I started overseas, my soldiers were like, hey, coach, they used to always call me coach, which is crazy. They said, hey, I really, really think you should become a personal trainer. You're so good at what you do and you love people, you love things. And I'm like, okay, thought about it. I got my certification online and I came back to Virginia where I was originally staying. And I ended up interning at Gold's Gym. And that's where Get Right Fitness came from. It was just like, all right, let's do it. Nobody showed up. Nobody did anything. And that's what led to more intense drinking. And I ended up losing, I guess what you'll say. I moved out before I got kicked out of an apartment and moved to Northern Virginia where I had another opportunity afforded to me. And that's where uncovering the new you came from, because I went back into depression again shortly after that. And my son didn't want to come with me because he got tired of moving. He says, can I stay with my grandmother? And I said, you don't want to come with mom? He says, no, mommy, I'm tired of moving. That set me overboard because I couldn't keep anything stable. I couldn't put the pieces together. If you noticed, I was all over the place. Here, there, everywhere. And one day, drinking, when I had lost so much weight, I was drinking a bottle of Everclear at this time. That's like gasoline in the alcohol world. It's like, I think it's like 99% proof. My eyes were sunken in. I was crying. And I said, Nesi, you have to uncover the new you, because if you don't, you're going to lose your life and your son will be parentless. That's a reality for you. When you have to look at yourself and realize that you're wasting away. I didn't have anyone to talk to. My mom and my dad were there, but they're well off. They've taken care of their responsibility. I didn't want to go back with that shame. It's shameful to have to face your family that way. And so from there, when I did that, I used fitness as my outlet. And I began to recover. So I discovered the problem, which was my faith in myself, my faith in my ability to stand up. And I began to recover the strength that I needed to then uncover that new you that I talk about all the time.
Oh, thank you for sharing so transparently. But I want to ask, how did you get into the military, and what was that experience like? Just being in Iraq. I want to know, and I'm sure the listeners would want to know. Sometimes we see, persons in the military and stuff, but as a woman being in the military, what got you there, and what was that experience like? And what would you say that, probably is the biggest lesson that you have learned that have made you who you are today?
I joined the military at the age of 17 in my junior year of high school. I saw a recruiter sitting outside and he was just like, hey, you want to join the Army? I'm like, hey, sure. He was like, I can pay for school. I can do all these other good things. And I did. I went home. I told my mom and my dad I wanted to go to the Army because I didn't want them to pay for my college, because I wanted to go to school. I didn't know what I wanted to go to school for. And that's how I got into it, literally. Like, my dad was in the military. My brother went into the military after me, but I had a host of uncles in the military also. So I come from a military family. I've been to Iraq 4 times. Every time has been something different. But the biggest lesson is that I guess there's two. One is it forced me into being humble. When I went through my challenges of life, I've never had to live without. My mom and my dad always gave us, when we did well in school, they made sure we had. We never wanted for anything growing up as children. We lived in a nice house. We had nice cars, and pretty much we had whatever we wanted as long as we deserved it. And I didn't have to struggle. When I started to struggle in my own life and started to see the disparities happen, being in Iraq and looking at what I saw, that people don't have the opportunity to be afforded anything greater. If the government says you're not going to college, they're not going to college. They don't have an option to just apply and somebody to say no. The foods, that they eat, the environment, not having clean water, not having freedom. It taught me to be humble, that I still have another opportunity to get up and go. I have no reason to quit because there's opportunities out here for me. And so seeing that they don't have the opportunity unless they leave, and if they can get out. That was the number one thing of learning to be humble. I mean, I was so thankful to see a normal washer and dryer when I came home. Like I didn't care if it came from the Goodwill. I did not care. I was just thankful to see one, and it was like washing your clothes by hand, having to decide whether you're going to drink water or take a bath with it. When I first went, it was crazy. The second lesson is that leaders not only lead, but they also learn to follow. As a leader, we think that it's always about giving instructions, but as a business owner, I've learned to listen to the people that I work with, because they too have great insight. They may be wanting to lead in their own way, but they may have insight to help lead you in a better direction or help you to get another step forward. And being in Iraq, with some of the leaders that I've had have not been so good. The people that I've been under and having to work with have not been so good. And it's very discouraging, very hurtful. And to know that they wouldn't listen to anybody. And if they had made different choices, we could have been in different places or done different things, and more benefits could have been brought to us in particular times and areas. So leaders not only lead, but they do listen to their followers. They learn to follow as well. That doesn't make you a follower because you're a leader, but as people know, everybody that you work with, a team, everybody has something to contribute. And I learned that is for sure.
Yes, thank you. When you said that, I think about, Jesus always referring to that servant leadership. While I serve, I lead while I serve. And as I serve, I would be called to lead. So that servant leadership came to mind. And I thank you for that reminder regarding just humility, just sometimes we take for granted the things that we have opportunities for. Sometimes we underestimate just how blessed we are until we're exposed to something else, and we're like, whoa. And like you said, in Iraq, when you're there, you could see, okay, at the choice between bathing or drinking water, things like this. And it's just reminding you how blessed you are. And, for that, I'm grateful for you sharing that. Now, I want you to kind of share about, okay, so you are a single mother, I'm in this depressed state. How did you find love? Right? So a lot of women are listening, and they, sometimes, especially you spoke about being abused, and just embarrassed because you're graduating and you had a black eye. And how did you learn to love again? And how did that transition come about?
Oh, wow. You know what? I had to take a sabbatical. I took a 7-year sabbatical from relationships because I kept getting hurt over and over again. You know how easy it is to become so vulnerable, especially when you want to be loved. And I love hard. You know, I love anybody that comes in my presence and has a good aura about them. I try to love on them, and, you know, and it doesn't always work, but, you know, it's like you try to love on a person and try to, you know, show them the great side of you, the better side of you. And I have to say, when I took that 7-year sabbatical, I took that time to find me. You know, before you can really love anybody else, you have to learn how to love yourself. I always felt like I needed people around me to gratify me, to validate what God has already put inside of me, my strength, my ability to do, my ability to go, my smile, my vibe, my energy. God needed to validate that, not man. And I allowed man to do that. And every time that man never saw that, I thought something was wrong with me. God said, I made you in my image, and yet you are constantly asking man and begging man for something that I've already given and ordained.
Whoa. Whew.
Yeah. And I said, all right, God, it's no more. It's no more. It was a focus on me and my son. It was a focusing on trying to rebuild my nature. I had friends, but it never went anywhere. It stayed as friendship. And because I didn't want my son to see me with all these men, and he's trying to figure out who's dad, where is dad, why isn't dad here? I didn't want him to have that image either. I needed my son to be just as close to God as I was. And so me and him took this journey of being able to pray together and know that you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. And I am a believer of that. I am a testimony of that. And so I took 7 years. It literally, in my 7th year of being celibate, 7 years of a sabbatical away from relationships. And again, like I said, I had friends, but nothing sexual, nothing intimate. I didn't get myself involved with anyone because I knew that I needed to find me first. And one day I was working out in my gym, and my dad came to see me in Virginia. I had a little gym, and, you know, I had bought little weights here and there. And he said he really wanted some food. I'm a vegetarian. My dad said, I need some real food. Put some meat on my plate. So he said, go to the store and go get some. And so I did. And I saw this gentleman. He was coming through the light. And when he came through the light, it was like he was like, no, you go first and then I'll go. So I went and I got out the car, and he parked literally in front of me. And he waved and he looked, he waved and he looked, and I waved too. And he started to walk around the grocery store with me. And I was sweaty. I wasn't sweaty to the point of where I couldn't go grocery shopping, you know, but I knew that I was clammy. And I walked over by the vegetables, and I kind of got cold a little bit. And he said, what you shivering for? It's your fault you in here. And, you know, you in here and you sweaty. He said, you just finished working out, didn't you? I'm looking at this man like, who are you? And why are you talking to me? And, you know, and he laughed and walked away. Didn't say much. He continued to walk around and says, oh, so do you work out? And I'm like, yes, I do. I'm a trainer. He was like, oh, okay, I'm a bodybuilder. He said, oh, when you finish, you know, texting whoever you texting, make sure you look up Mr. Swole. I'm like, who is Mr. Swole? He said, and he introduced me. He said, my name is Fred Ewing, and I'm a bodybuilder out of Florida, retired Navy. And I was like, oh, okay, nice, great. So he used to operate in the grocery store that I was in. The company that he worked for oversaw some of the infrastructure. He gave me his card, and on our way out, it was a homeless guy, and I was getting ready to give the homeless guy food. He says, no, I will go and get him food for him and his family. He said, now here, you go ahead, have a good day, just call me later. I'm looking at him again. I'm like, no, I'm not calling you. And so I did call. He made sure I called because he said, what is your number? He took my number and said, I'm going to call you to make sure your number's right. So I said, okay. So he called me, and literally, It's scary. And when I say this, y'all, I promise you, he's not crazy. He's not a stalker. But when he called me, he texted me about, I say 3 hours later and says, I found my wife. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I found my wife. And I'm like, oh God. I said, please don't be crazy. Don't be a stalker. I don't need this. I've already had one before. He says, I'm not.
Man know what he wants.
Right? I said, don't do this. And so he said, I found my wife. He said, my grandmother always said, when you find a good thing, you better capture it right then and there. And I'm like, oh God. So after that, literally, he said, well, I'll train you into bodybuilding if you want. And I'm saying, okay. And again, he still pursued. One day he came with one thing. He came with another thing. He would bring me and my son dinner. He would never stay over. He would come and leave, play with my son outside, never saw the inside of my house. We would train. He would leave. We would talk. And what I didn't know is that he had already talked to my son roughly about the third week of him knowing him. He had already had my son to take one of my rings. He went to go get my ring size. And this is all after I didn't know any of this after now that we're married. He did that. And I was getting ready to leave Virginia to deploy to to move to Fort Bragg. And he said, I'll take you. He took me. He picked up my mom because I told my mother needed to go with me. And he took us to look for houses. He said, I need to know where you're going to stay. This is the 4th week. So the last week I was getting ready to go to South Carolina for a military school as well. He was like, can I come with you? I says, no. He's like, can I come with you? I'm like, no, I need a time away from you. I see you every day for training. I'm good. Go away. And at this time, he still had not mentioned anything else about marriage, anything, nothing. No, again, no connection there, just a friend, as someone training me, getting to know. And what I didn't know is that when he picked up my mom, he had my mother's address. He had my mother's cell phone number. And he had my ring size. When I left to go to South Carolina for a class, he called my best friend through my Facebook page and let her know that he was going to propose to me and that he set everything up. He called my mom, my dad, asked my mom and my dad for my hand in marriage. Well, he went down there to my mom's house and asked me, and he had already asked my son for my hand in marriage as well. And so there were some other things that happened as well because he was trying to come down there. He kept sending me pictures of rings. He kept sending me all of this. And here's the deal. So when he said, what are some things that you want before you get married? I said, one, you got to ask God for me. I said, if you don't ask God, if you're not a praying man, then I don't want you. I said, secondly, you got to ask my mom, my dad, and my son for my hand in marriage. I said, 3, you have to have my nails done. 4, you got to know my entire name from first, middle, and last. And last but not least, you got to have both sides of my family there to record it. And when I graduated from the school was only 2 weeks. 40 hours. 40 hours is 1 week. I had a 40-hour course. On my way back, my mother told me to stop at the house. When I stopped at the house, what I didn't know is that everybody was already there. There was a series of things that happened, as far as my dad was cooking out. And I'm looking at my dad like, why are y'all cooking? He was like, we can't celebrate you. Dad, listen, it's a 40-hour course. It's nothing. He was like, no, we're going to celebrate you. And so through all of that, going to the store, getting things done, my mother sending me out back and forth. And when I came back, my entire family, something I had not seen since I was 16 years old, my mom's family and my dad's family in the same room. And my now husband is there to propose to me in front of my family. And I was very leery. I talked to my grandmother, and my grandmother said, this is the man that you need to marry. I've already prayed over him. He's been here since Thursday, and it's now Sunday. I've been praying for him since then, and God has already said, this is the man you need to be with. And I said yes. And we are at June 23rd of 2020, we will now be celebrating our 4-year anniversary. Excuse me, June 25th. June 23rd is my son's birthday, June 25th.
Wow. It's so nice. It's so I mean, this happened, you met him what? That sound like about 8 weeks? Thereabout?
We knew each other 31 days.
Wow. And that man knew what he wanted.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I learned to love again because I didn't fall in love immediately, right? It was that my grandmother is somebody that's never lied to me about anything. And, sometimes when you ask for advice, you just listen simply because that's that person is going to give you the right advice. I took a chance on love because I had been proposed to many times before, but I knew it wasn't right because I automatically said no. This time it was a thought process there. Like, should I? I don't know. I'm scared. What do I do? And, God says sometimes you got to take chances because all you need is that one person to change your life. And he was that one person.
Wow, that's very encouraging. That's really encouraging, I must say. So, Nesi, I want you to take somebody that probably just in a state of hopelessness, whether relationally, whether job situation, whether financially, because you have faced, a lot of persons will say, I financially, like a lot of people are going through financial holes. You lived in a car for for a few months, so you have been there, and now you are now doing your doctorate, you are operating a business, you're still the fitness guru, you're still in the military, and you're still a mother, a wife, a praying woman. That transition of becoming who you are now, I would love for you to just share some practical steps with the audience or persons that are feeling very discouraged because of whatever situation, whether it be, just going through some whatever level of depression, because you attempted suicide. You spoke about being a drunkard, just being an alcoholic. You have spoken about just the level of depression, and you have experienced war, like true gunshot war in Iraq kind of thing. And look at the woman that you have become. God has just shown himself so faithful. And I believe that this episode is for somebody that feels like that hopelessness. That hopelessness. I want you to take them through some practical things that you had to do to move from that depression, that suicidal, that alcoholic, that woman that has been abused, that woman that has been rejected, like so many things you have faced over this lifetime, and look at woman you have become. Share some practical things.
So the first thing that I would say is that you have to stop blaming everyone else for the problems in your life. I'm a firm believer that we have an allowance jar of things that we're going to allow people to do to us, that allow people to say to us, allow things to continue to happen over and over again before we put a stop to it. Say, no, you're not going to do this anymore. No, I'm not giving you this anymore. No, you're not going to hit me anymore. No, you're not going to take from me anymore. You're not going to do this. And there's an allowance jar. You allow so many things. And when that jar gets full, you get tired of being tired. And so when you stop blaming everybody else for, them treating you wrong, you better teach them how to treat you. That's when you start taking charge of you and where you are. When you start deciding that it's now my time and I'm going to discover the fact that I know I can do this, but I'm going to put an end to the things that I'm allowing people to do to me. Because we can accept things, and we don't have to accept everything that everybody gives us, because every dollar is not a good dollar, and every good advice, every piece of advice is not good advice. So sometimes people can be feeding into your downfall and never feeding into your uprising. And sometimes people can keep you there, and people can help you They can hinder you by helping you also. But when you start taking accountability for yourself and you discover the problem that you have, whether it's consistency, whether it's saying no, whether it's setting boundaries, whether it's just taking a step back and saying, I need to take one step at a time, that's when you begin to take control of your life. You discover the problem that you have. And you get committed to saying, I'm going to change these behaviors because I know that I can do better and I have the ability to do better. Now, the recovery piece is recovering the strength to do that. Right? We're all embedded with a powerhouse filled with strength. We are. We're almighty. Because look at the God we serve. He was beaten, battered, and bruised, but yet he still never lost his faith in being able to give, being able to surrender, being able to tell. He will cast people off like anything, and he would still come back with a vengeance and blessings all at the same time. And so we have to recover that strength inside. We have to understand how powerful we really are when we take charge over what we know we can do. And what we have the ability to do. Even if we don't see it, you still have to trust the process. And recovering that, what that looks like is recovering the ability to say, I can try this. I can keep going. Oh, I made it one step. Oh, I made it another step. Oh man, I completed this step. And you begin to recover the strength, every milestone and every success that you have. Because through everything that I went through, if I had stopped, I would have never seen what was coming up next. And a lot of us, we try to have that forward thinking and try to see in the future. We weren't designed to do that. We have to understand that we've got to take control of now and recovering what you are now, recovering what you want to be, recovering what you know you can be, recovering those strengths that you know your grandmother had or your grandfather had or your caretaker, whoever raised you. Your environment creates you to a certain degree, and it can either make or break you. In this recovery process, it's uncovering the process, it's getting to the process. And the last piece is that uncovering. Now you peel back the layers of what the problem is. That's one slice of the onion. You took the skin off. The recovery process was peeling it back and looking at now, how can you build and how can you use each part of it without throwing it away? This uncovering process now reveals what you need to do to keep going forward. It is that first step that you take. It's the action step. You've done the preparing. You've planned, and now this is the action step that you take in going forward in life. And so if you feel like you can't do it, ask yourself, why not you? Don't ask you, why can't you do it? Because sometimes it's just because you don't want to. Sometimes it's just because you don't see it, and you knowing that God never saw what was happening next. Everybody did not believe him. He said, watch and see. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe and trust what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And ask yourself, why not you? Why are you not good enough to have success? Why are you not good enough to have a relationship? Because you are. You can't give me reasons of why you're not. And when you believe that you are worthy and you begin to understand that you now can create the environment that you want, by setting the standards, setting those boundaries, and taking actions to get to the next step, you begin to uncover so much about yourself that you didn't know. You'll say, I didn't realize I had this strength. One of my favorite singers is Whitney Houston, and one of her songs says, I didn't know my own strength. And every battle that she faced, and this was when she was suffering on drugs, and she was trying to come off, and it just wouldn't let her go. But until she crashed and burned, and when that song, it says she didn't know her own strength. And you don't know that until you begin to uncover the process. And it's a one step. That one step is all you need to really find who you are. But you got to believe, you got to trust, you got to keep praying, you got to keep asking, and you got to stay committed. Just because you fall doesn't mean that you can't get up. But nobody told you had to take 2 steps. I'm only asking for 1. So give yourself the opportunity to take 1 step. And if you fall, get up and try again and take another.
Wow. I'm just like soaking all of this in, because like you said, sometimes we blame others for what's happening in our lives. And even if others have contributed to whatever negativity, whether, you probably didn't have parents that supported you, you probably, just had very unfortunate situations. What Nesi is saying, that at the end of the day, it's a choice for me to make up my mind that I can do better, I can be better, I deserve better. And what we're saying, and what I hear Nisi saying, is that the God has just given us such a strength that we underestimate.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the book of Genesis, when they were building the Tower of Babel, God says, listen, they can do it. Like he says, I'm going to come down and confuse their language, because anything they put their mind to, they can achieve. Mm-hmm. That's what the God said. So God came down and confused their language, because the power of because we're made in God's image, just naturally we already have a strength that we don't even realize. But then when you come into a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ, then you even uncover a greater strength, because now the Holy Spirit that lives in you even give you a more supernatural strength.
Absolutely.
And Nesi has spoken over and over about the power of prayer. I'm not sure if you're listening, but she talked about the power of vision. Mm-hmm. The power of seeing that if I can see, just get a glimpse of what my life could be like, different, then I can take 1 step forward to make it different.
That's right.
She has spoken about, just many times not having the money, but look at where the Lord has taken her from.
Okay.
So sometimes you need to ask for help. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you don't have if you don't have the money, then it means that you have to spend the time studying, reading books, investing in courses, just things to grow you. Because for some of us, we have never been exposed to positive environment.
Oh yeah.
So we have to cultivate it. And thank God for YouTube. Thank God for His word.
Oh yeah.
Right? Thank God for people that are like podcasts like this, where you're listening and you're hearing stories of survivors and women that have been through abortion and masturbation and depression. And what we are saying today is that it's time for you to uncover a new you.
Oh yeah.
And even if you're satisfied with where you're at, you have your degree, you have the husband, but the truth is there's always a new you that can arise. There's always more that God wants to do in and through you.
Oh yeah, it's just brewing on the inside. Absolutely. Yes.
What a beautiful God we serve. What an amazing testimony that Shenesia has decided to share with us today. So Nesi, as we close off for today, I want you, whatever it is that you feel led on your heart, to just leave with our listeners, but also tell us about the business. Tell us how you can serve, who you're called to serve right now in your business. How can persons reach out to you? Tell us a little bit about your book. And I will leave her book, the link to her book, in the show notes so you can get a copy, right? But again, what we're saying, for somebody, like, the days have gone where we're throwing ourselves pity parties.
Oh yeah.
You remember what we were locked down in COVID for almost 3-4 months?
Yeah.
You see, when we had our pity party moments in COVID, right? For some of you, you did. But what we're saying, look at how the world just shut down in an instant, just like that. But look at how things are coming back, and it's what they're saying is a new normal. You have to prepare for something new. So what are you going to do? So Nesi, go ahead.
So as a fitness transformation coach, I focus on tying in the physical and the mental well-being, right? The physical and the mental fitness of you, bringing it in. Because when you feel good and you look good, you do good. And then if you're not doing so well, then one of the two things you always put on the back burner, and that's usually your health. I don't want to go to the gym. I just want to sleep. I want to eat whatever I want. I want to eat a bucket of ice cream. I want to eat, fast food all day long. And you're not really taking care of the inside like you should in order to have that clarity. And so right now I serve women, men, and children. I believe that we all can benefit from health and wellness. I think it starts from the younger generation, and it takes us all the way up. My oldest client is 73 years old right now. And so I serve pretty much everybody. I focus on my women, especially because I know what it's like to be a woman. I know the struggles we have as a woman, especially a woman in her 30s. So my women in my 30s and up is what I focus on more than anything. My veterans, my soldiers that are coming back from overseas, we are facing a lot of battles as well, trying to balance out what we've got going on. My athletes, that's who I love, because I'm a sports fan to the heart. And as a transformation coach, I focus on women over 30 in their challenges and building the mindset, and focusing on tying in once again how your health and your mindset is connected, and getting you to tie them in together as well from the transformation side. But we focus more on mindset and perspective and building on those things in order to see something different, in order to do different, in order to have different. Uncovering the New You, again, was established June 23rd of 2018. It is a testimony, not a story. It is a testimony of my life from beginning to end. Some of the things that I've shared with you, and there's even more deeper things that I go into on how I turned my struggle into a success. That pity party that we were just talking about, I had many of those. Crying out, wishing somebody would help me instead of me helping myself, or relying on God first. And the one thing that is being placed on my heart to tell you is this. You will never know what you're capable of doing if you don't try. If you sit here and you complain all day long about what you can't do, what you don't know how to do, if nobody's helping you, nobody's doing this, nobody's doing that, here is something. You can help yourself. You can find the resources. Google was my friend. Instagram, Facebook was my friend, because now there's information everywhere that we can find it. And it took me a while to find the right people to align myself with. Yes, I had bumps and bruises there, but I was still seeking the information, because when you are a constant learner and in learning mode every single day, you will find that your information is right in your face. It's just now, who can you trust it with? Now, who can you build with? Now, who can you adjust just to open up to and help lead you in the right way? You got to remain coachable. You got to remain teachable, and you got to be willing to learn. Don't sit here and say what you can't do if you've never tried. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to continue to stay in prayer to get rid of the negative thoughts and feelings, but you will never know if you don't try. The process of uncovering the new you is that you can have all the tools in front of you. But the key is is that change begins with you. It's got to start with you.
And as we close on that note, to say it starts with you, the decision to do anything in this life, it starts with you. It starts with believing that it's possible. It starts with taking that faith. You say faith without works is dead. So when you get that vision, you want to make the first step. What's the first thing that I will do? And understand that even when you have bumps on the road, it's okay. Like, it really is okay.
Yep, it is.
You will bounce back. You will bounce back. And like Nesi says, you can change that struggle story to a success story.
Absolutely.
It is possible.
Oh, yeah.
And I am so blessed by today's conversation. I'm so blessed by this podcast, the reviews that we've been getting, the persons that I've just been messaging, and, just been inspired by this podcast, and, just my obedience. And I just want to shout you all out, the listeners. I want to say thank you. And we have started the opportunity for you to ask questions, right? So you can send me a question via a comment on YouTube or a comment on Apple Podcasts. You can send me via email, and going forward, we're going to answer one question from a listener each week. So whatever question it is that you're asking, whether about your faith, about your health, if I can't answer, what I'll do is I'll bring back some of our guests to answer some of those questions, right? Or I'll ask them and then I'll read out the answer if I, Crystal, can't answer. But I just want to thank you for joining the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast for another amazing week. I thank you, Shenesia, for sharing your story. I feel so, I'm just so blessed. I'm just so blessed. I love listening to her speak, actually. I really do love listening to her speak. I always go on her lives and just listen to her. And I am not very, well, I love sports, but I don't necessarily like to do the athletic part. But I'm proud of me because I've been exercising consistently for at least a month now. Woo, woo, woo. So, and it started I just took a start, 50 minutes per day, and it has actually been a blessing. So it's hard, but it's a blessing, right? So thank you again for joining another episode of the Diary of a Jesus Girl podcast. Remember to send your questions. Remember to leave a review. Remember to share this with a friend. You don't know what anybody is going through. So even if you think somebody is okay, you don't know. And I believe that Shenesia's story will bless somebody. Uncovering the new you starts with you. God bless you.
Diary of a Jesus Girl. Jesus Girl.